All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm JustMoparJoe. We're working on the 400 again today, and a lot of people were interested in my intakes last time. So let me show you what those look like. Here is the street dominator. I've got it blasted off and cleaned up, washed out, and I spray painted it with some cast aluminum paint. So it looks a lot better. I like to paint mine now. If I have the paint available and they're not brand new, like this one is brand new, my Edelbrock Performer RPM, and it kind of keeps that white corrosion off of them for a while. I actually put some mastic tape on this. You can see what that stuff looks like. I got that from my HVAC guy when they put my AC in this past summer. So it's well worth a couple pieces to keep my flanges nice and clean. There were some viewers that had good points about the reversion deal, that the intake runner's port size needs to be slightly narrower. I think it was quoted 20 to 25 thousandths than the head ports. So I've got my calipers out today. I got something that I don't see a lot of on the internet, and I'll show you kind of my process for putting this one on, this intake. But before we do that, let me get the camera set up and we will measure these port widths. Okay, so I'll get her zeroed out, nice and clean. I'm gonna go from the outer edges of these, and I'm not going deep into the port, basically just right at the cross-sectional width of the port, some would like to say. So right there, I'm 1.211, so 211 thousandths. Let's try this one. It's a little slightly wider. 1, 2, 3, 40. Move down. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 40. And I mean, it's splitting hairs, but yeah, 1, 2, 3, 40 gets it in there, just barely. Move that one back some. 1, 2, 190. 1, 2. So I'm gonna set it up about 1, 2, 3, 40. I can get close to it. There we go. And lock her down. So we'll go compare that to our actual intake openings. Here's our 1, 2, 3, 40. And over to our intake, it will not fit into the intake here. So for the most part, and I'll even try to drag it down so you can see it, she's outside of it there. I think this is my widest port. See how we fell into that one? So somebody got a little happy as they were grinding there. But I mean, I can't fault the guy, whoever did this intake. It's a really nice job. Let's move over to these two. See, we can't fall in there. I can actually make a little mark, I think. No, we fell in, we're out, and we're out there. So I would guess we're out maybe 3 or 4 thousandths right there on that edge. This port here, see, we're out plenty. So falls in, falls out. So it is very close. But I understand the concept of flowing from this intake into the head. You wouldn't want to go from a larger hole to a smaller. So if I get time, I am still going to port the old air gap here. I call it air gap. It's Performer RPM. But I mean, if you were to see the difference there. There we go. 111.95. So what is that? 240 thousandths basically. So that could be thinned out nicely there. And it may even could be just, try that, dude. 565. That could be a cartridge roll scenario where that gets smoothed out and cleaned up and be the perfect width, as he was saying earlier. I do have some longer bits to be able to open up in here too, but. All right. I got my valley pan in. 4 bolts down in the corners. And I just kind of slid it back and forth so the bottom lip where it hits the port was even on both sides. So what I'm going to do now, I've got it centered between my bolt holes. There and there and there and there. Both sides. I'll take my black Sharpie and I'm going to hold it. And I'm dragging my finger. And it'll catch. So I'm not going to get too crazy with this, but there's certain spots that's really hanging over, like this corner here. And I'm going to give them a little mark. See, I can see my edge shining right through there. You may not can see it. Let's push her down. Mark my corner. Mark my corner. I mean, it's almost perfect there. And I know, and I realize when the intake smashes, this is going to extrude out a little further. I'm going to hit that side right there. I understand that's not the full and accurate version of where to cut, but everybody has their own system. I feel pretty good about this because I just have one of those memories. I mean, I can tell you, yes, I marked that here. I should cut about that much. And you could always cut it and come back and cut it and come back. That's what test fitting's all about, isn't it? I mean, it basically looks like every corner needs a little trim. There we go. I can see that one nicely. I'll do one port at a time. Pop it on, pop it off. And I'll show you how I'm trimming this also. It's going to be pretty loud, so I'll probably play some music over it. And I've trimmed that bottom right corner just a little bit. And you may be wondering, how did you do that? I'll show you an easy, simple way. If you need to trim some little tin like this, or anything that is very thin and shim-like, here's how I do it. Here's my old Harbor Freight vise, Harbor Freight drill, and that's actually a Harbor Freight sandpaper roll cartridge. My new ones are coming in this Friday. That's the finest one that I had. So I stuck it on the end of a screw, put my screw in my drill, and that allows me to work the piece around the bit instead of working the bit around the piece. And I'm gonna get you set up, just hooked up to my bead blaster there, and you can watch me cut one real quick. You don't have to watch them all because that would be redundant. Check this out. So I want to show you this before I put it on the engine. There we go. Got my rag wet with lacquer thinner, and I'm wiping that black mark off. I'm wiping off any fine metal particles that could fall into my engine. Cleanliness is very important if y'all haven't figured it out. Nice and clean. Bolt her down, my 4 bolts. So before I tighten these down, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push, checking bottom to bottom. Kind of hold down, get them as tight as I can, finger tight. Check the bottoms. There we go. Now we get our marker ready again, and we check that port. Oh, she looks a lot nicer on bottom. See how you can kind of see just the very tipped edge of that. I can hold the gasket down. You can see his edge where the porting took place. That's nice. I don't like to grind these all the way back into that lip. I like to leave just a very small thickness there. Call it 10 thousandths, call it whatever you want to. So that when this smashes, it'll have still have a flat surface there to smash down to. That's just me. Y'all, obviously everybody builds engines a little differently. Mark it up real quick and do it. But once we get those done, we'll move to step number 2. Let's set the intake down. I didn't do any fancy drawing. I didn't drill any holes in this. What I'm going to do is set the intake down and put my 8 bolts in, and I'll be right back in a snap. Ignore my bolts. They kind of are mismatched, but they're all the correct length. How do we get in and look and see at that port? Well, I went ahead and torqued our manifold down so that it would smash that valley pan real nicely for me. And I did my best to, when I looked down, to center the bolt holes around the bolts. So I should be fairly close. The way I'm going to do it, and I just got this thing in the mail. This is a Vevor Borescope or endoscope. There we go. And she's got a camera. This thing shoots in 1080p, it says. If you push the button, it gets you a different camera. Push it enough. Let's see. So it can flip your view. There's a camera on the end and a camera on each side. So let's run her down and look. So here's our light settings. If you can see it. Kind of get them both. So our light is on and the light is off. It goes like 3 levels of brightness. So we want to start it with the lowest level. And I want to run her in. Now, that is the bottom of our port. So currently, I have this torqued into place, and at the bottom of the port, there's a pretty big mismatch. So we wouldn't be able to see that without the borescope here. Okay, here's what we know. The intake itself is too far down on the port window. So side to side is okay. I need to move towards me just a little bit, and it needs to go, the intake itself actually needs to come up on both sides. So how I'm gonna do that is with my little black gaskets. They send you these with the kits. A lot of people swear by them. A lot of people say, don't use that, there's no way, that's terrible. But if you combine that thickness there, it will raise that up for you. Also, this is the Mr. Gasket. I believe they're 30. Let's just measure. My speculation. And it is about 60 thousandths. I use both of these together. Nice sandwich. That is also about 60 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is stick one of these under my pan and one of these on top of my pan. That way, it'll have a nice gasket surface on both sides. I'm going to glue these to the actual pan itself and not glue them to my intake, because the plan is in the future to swap, be able to swap intakes real easily. So let me jump on that, and then we'll run our borescope again. I got my double gaskets on. Hopefully you can see them there. Valley pan in the middle. Please ignore the ugly bolts for now. I can switch that later. My endoscope is back in. You can see, remember that ugly plug there, the bottom side of it. It's kind of that rusty color. And as we roll past it, that is where my, let me just film that. There we go. Okay, you see my ugly plug there. As we roll past it, you can see the roof of that port, and they are almost perfectly lined up. The wall itself is almost perfectly lined up. And as I spin, the bottom is just a little bit larger than the port of the head. You can see the shiny side, shinier side is the head chamber port, the head port. So everything's about a compromise. We have our sidewalls and our roof of our ports perfectly lined up. I'm going to call that as good as we can get. I did check 3 or 4 other ports. I can slide you in one here real quickly. So basically opposite side. Get in there. There we go. Gasket hangs in just a little bit, so maybe that'll give me a synthetic wall for you reversion people out there. But not much I can do about it. I guess if I had these heads off and I could port them larger, but it's not worth it for that to me. I'm pretty satisfied with how this looks. Let's find another hole. Right there. There's our roof. And there's our wall. So I'm working with the intake that I've got. I'm going to work on that Edelbrock later, trying to port it up real nicely. But for what it is, I think they're very close. There's a lot of intakes and heads out there right now on race engines that aren't matched this well. Not that this one is perfect, but it's doing pretty well for what it is. The valves are lashed. I got that done today. Oil pump is on. Basically, the intake's bolted down. I'm going to be ready to throw this thing on a run stand soon. So hopefully y'all come back for that. I'm going to have my, I've got a Holley 830 throw on, or I've got a 750 AFB just to run it with. So hopefully y'all come back for that. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you next time.